Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Uncork Switch channel with the Uncoder. Doing our final episode in our series of APIs and IPAs. So it's the final one because, hey, we're getting toward the end of summer. At least, the official end of summer. Unofficial, I guess, Labor Day. Official, a few weeks later at the autumnal equinox. Is that what it's called? Vernal equinox? Something about an equinox. Either way, since it's the end of summer, we thought we'd go out with a beer that's kind of summery, and it's from Montauk Brewery out at the end of Long Island. So we're at the end of summer. We're going to go to the end of Long Island, and we're going to chase some waves. It's called the Wave Chaser IPA. So we're going to chase some waves in the waning weeks and the waning weekends of summer. I imagine many of you might be headed to the beach for one of your last times. I mean, if you got kids, your kids are probably starting school next week, so take them to the beach, give them one more sunburn for the year, and then get on to the rest of the year. So let's crack this open. I will say I have had this beer a fair amount, but it's been a minute. So let's give it our first taste. It's so nice because it's not like I talked about this when I did the Talea the other week with the sour IPA. What Montauk does, they do every beer just right. They don't get crazy. They don't go wild. Like, this is just like a pretty solid West Coast IPA. Nothing that's going to blow your mind. Sorry for any Montauk people who see this, but it's solid and it's always going to be drinkable. And that's what you could say kind of across the whole spectrum of Montauk beers is whatever you're buying, just know you're going to have a good one of it. Right? You're not going to have the best Pilsner of your life, but you're going to have a really good Pilsner. You're not going to have the best summer ale. You're not going to have the best IPA, but you're going to have a very, very good, dependable, consistent, on-point beverage. That's what I've always felt that Montauk has provided. And it's kind of crazy to see them. I don't know if they have made it too far outside of New York, but like even in the city and on the island, and probably on some of the metro area states, you get Montauk everywhere now. And I was just reading the 6-pack when I was coming back from the store when I picked this up, and it said they found it in 2012, which is crazy because that's the first time I ever had a Montauk beer. It was like 10 years ago out in Montauk when all they did was fill growlers. It was just the brew pub, or brewery for that matter. They didn't can, they didn't distribute, they just had growlers. That was like the first taste. So it's so cool to see 10 years later, they have such a wide distribution network. And again, it just goes back to that like very solidly made beer of all the styles you kind of expect when you walk into a store and you look in the cooler and you want to pick something out, particularly for summer. They also got a great watermelon session ale. Sounds like something I would never drink in my life. I love watermelon, don't like watermelon artificial flavoring, and typically don't like fruity beers. But their watermelon is like, it's not very watermelon-y. So even though we're drinking the IPA, the Wave Chaser, I'll take another sip and cheers to you all today. Go check out all the Montauk. And heck, if you got nothing to do this weekend, drive out to Montauk and you'll probably sit in 4 hours of traffic with everybody else from New York who's going to be heading out to enjoy that last weekend of summer. So with the fact that summer's coming to an end, that means fall is getting started. This is my segue into our APIs now that we've talked about the IPAs. So fall is starting. And what does fall mean? Football season, right? And I'm sure football season means NFL season. It also probably means your fantasy football season, right? Many of you probably have multiple fantasy leagues. I know I've got a couple. And you probably have your draft. Either you just had it or you're about to have it very soon. So we thought we would focus today on a fantasy football related API and help get you ready for your upcoming draft. So let's kick that screen into high gear and let's start building some stuff that might help you win your fantasy league. And if you do win your fantasy league as a result of this Twitch podcast, as a result of this Twitch, please send at least 10% of your winnings to the Uncoder. I think it'll be well deserved. So is my screen up? Let's get that up and we can start going to town. All right, cool. So in order to do that, I found this API. Now, finding sports APIs are hard, really hard. I've been trying for decades to find a really good sports API to build sports stuff on. I even remember back before they started doing online auction drafts, I tried to create a a desktop application that would do auction drafting online for me and my friends because we were tired of doing it in like the chat box of a Google Doc. But I couldn't find a good API, right? Because Stats Inc., the ones that you always see like on CBS and Fox and NBC after a game, like stats provided by Stats Inc. I messaged them to get their API credentials, and they're like, they never replied because they're like, you're not ESPN. We don't really care if you want to use our data. That being said, thank you, Sports Data IO, for giving free trials to your data. So I was able to get myself a free trial to the Sports Data IO NFL, or in this was both fantasy and regular sports. We're going to focus on the fantasy one here, even betting stuff. That's probably not good for a professional Twitch. So let's hook up this API. Since it's a free trial, I'm just going to show you the key. Doesn't really matter. So let's just start from scratch, right? What we always kind of do is show how easy it is to just start calling APIs in Uncoder. So as always, we'll hop over to our administration. Oh, and I'm really excited to show this today. So, oh, no. Oh, what happened? We had redesigned the services administration page in Uncork. It looked tremendous. It looked wonderful and beautiful. And now it's back. It's gone. It's back to the old one. I'm going to have to go ask folks what happened to the really good-looking new services admin page. One way or another, this is going to get a major facelift very soon, so get excited for that. So we'll call this Sports. I cannot type Sports Data IO, and we'll just put it all Sports Data IO Service Protocol. So what am I calling here? So, all right, they don't really tell me. Let's just pick one. I wanted the ADP. I wanted one ADP as in average draft position. If you don't know, fantasy players with ADP, average draft. So let's just open up this API, and we're gonna grab. Let's see. Does everything start with V3 NFL stats? There's 22 of them. I mean, it feels pretty good. It looks like it is not all the endpoints. V3 NFL. All right, so we're going to grab everything up to NFL. As I would say, try to make the service hosting protocol as far into the API's URL as you can consistently get every single time. Now, I did put the NFL in there. Of course, if I was building a suite of sports-related API applications here, I might decide to remove the NFL and then make that something I add into my specific plugins, or maybe create separate ones for NFL and so on and so forth. And then maybe I just leave it at the version, the V3, so then if they roll out a V4, I can build a new service and then just gradually switch over to V4. Either way, it looks like it says here at the top, what can I do? In order to do it, I take my key and I either put it in the GET request or I put it in the header. Well, I don't want to put it in the GET request, even though all of these are GETs, right? So when I click this link, what happened? It popped this key. So there's my API key, which you can also see it's over there. I just got it today, right? And it throws the key up in the URL. That's not great, right? I mean, that's actually pretty insecure because this is going to get logged all over the place, right? Anything you put in the query string is going to go into your logs. So you're going to be logging your API key. It's over HTTPS, so you're okay. But the URL, it's like right there, front and center in the URL. So just from like a security perspective, you don't really want to ever be passing around sensitive information through the query string. Secondarily, when you're configuring it on Cork, right, you define the query string in the plugin itself, right? That's where you construct your GET query string. It's where you construct your post bodies for your requests. So if I were to do that, every time I made an API call, I would have to do key and then paste in my key. I mean, I guess I could also reference like the global variables and say vars.key, but I'm still then, it's an extra step for me every single time. So fortunately, they give me another option, which is to use this request header on all my requests. So that's what I'm going to do instead. So I'm going to grab this and I'll jump over back to my services administration. And as it says here, so there's no real authentication. The authentication is just through some kind of a shared key. Now this is all get data, right? All you can do is get data. So like I don't blame them. That's not the worst. Like if you're actually manipulating data, that's where, or the data that here is extremely sensitive, personal information, things like that, you probably want something more secure. But hey, just to get back some data, not actually write any data, this is totally cool way to go. So let's do that. And then let's grab our key from over here. And now this is going to be sent in the header for everything. So I'm going to, as I always do, I'm going to capture my request and response bodies for at least my development environment so I can triage and debug along the way. So I'm going to add this service. Cool. I've added the service. And now let's config. All right. So let's refresh this empty module. And let's just go get the basic players, right? So that would be stats, JSON, fantasy players. Let me make sure I did one thing here. I used to never like, I do have, I used the trailing slash. It's always a point of contention. Do people like trailing slashes or they not like trailing slashes? I used to always like to start everything with a slash. So it's kind of like an absolute path. And I think in a lot of like URLs, when you're linking to things, it's always smart to start with a slash because otherwise your URL is going to see where you are, or the link is going to see where you are, and it's going to add. So like, this is a total aside from building with APIs, right? But like, let's say you have a link on the page, and inside of your link, you write something like, I'm just going to type it in here, ahref equals, and then link, right? So there's a basic HTML link tag, and I put URL, right? If I were on this page and I just had a link that was URL, what it would do is it would actually just link me to this. It would put URL at the end of where I already am, right? Because it's like, well, hey, you're in workspaces, workspace ID, applications, application ID, modules. You gave me a relative path and that you didn't give me anything to go off of. So I'm just going to drop you into URL within the context of where you are. So put a leading slash in front of it, and then now you go. Now you are going to go all the way back to the beginning. So if I had this as my URL, right, then if I click that link, I'm actually going to go all the way up here. I'm going to go all the way back to the root. So it's saying I'm defining it from the root. So the reason that I kind of got to that aside is, well, that's leading slashes. What trailing slashes? Like if I'm putting in my service and protocol, do I put NFL or do I put NFL? I actually used to like doing this because, again, I was in this habit of always having like a slash in the beginning. I've changed my tune. I've become a trailing slasher. Either way, that's not important. My opinions on trailing slashes should not impact how you do trailing slashes. Either way, let's do plug players here. And we're going to do an external service. And we're going to grab sports data. And we're going to drop in stats, fantasy players. And that should be it, right? So let's do this. Let's do our always new submission initializer up at the top. Plug players, trigger, and go. Okay. So here we are. Does it work? Do I get players? Log myself in. And yeah, look at that. I get 862 players. That's a lot of players. And it's actually ranked. So it must be ranked by their ADP or their average draft position. Okay. And they do it by PPR. They have position. Anyway. All right, cool. So I feel like I always do the same thing on this, but like, let's throw this into something where we can look at this data, right? Because this is key data for you when you're doing your fantasy draft is when are people getting drafted, right? And you're going to go to all of these different websites and you're going to download cheat sheets of running backs and wide receivers, and then you're going to get a total cheat sheet. I don't know about you, but I download these like PDFs from CBS Sports and ESPN and NFL.com and stuff like that. And like, they're really annoying to look at because they're static PDFs. I don't know how to filter. It gets really annoying too when people start getting drafted and you don't know. Now, most of these apps have their own, right? Like you're in Yahoo or ESPN and they'll have ability to filter by a player by a position and then look at the drafting in that. But you're only getting one website's point of view. Now, granted, this is only one website's point of view. At least it gives you a second filterable point of view, or maybe you can compare against your draft tool. So let's do that. Let's just throw it in and see what we can do in terms of playing around with some data. All right. So now let's throw in the dynamic grid, which is where you've probably seen me go. You've probably seen me go to display a lot of data, right? And that's what I think is so fun about this grid itself is like it was not necessarily built to view data. It was really built to provide like Excel-like editing capabilities within Uncork. But I can tell you, like, all I use it for is viewing data and doing really quick analysis of data, you know? Not to say there aren't amazing use cases for the Excel part, but either way. So here we go. So now let's drop this in and we're going to add some data in. So what do I want here? Well, first I need their name and we'll get their position and we'll get their team and their bye week. All right, so let's go name, position, team, bye week. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, I'm going to use this on Saturday at my first of many drafts, 2 drafts actually. Name, position, team, bye week. So I assume position was just called position. And then we had bye week was bye week. Bye. And then I wanted, oh wait, actually I'm gonna do team here. Team. You know what? Oh wait, I can drag these, right? Hey, team, look at that. And then let's do bye week. All right. And now what? Oh, bye week, that'll be a number, right? Because it's a number of the week. Let's do that. Now, what else do we want? There's some cool information in here. So we have last season's fantasy points, projected fantasy points. And then we've got average position 2 QB. Okay, so let's just add in. Well, I guess we don't. Where my head is going here with PPR and not. I don't want to throw in this, and then I want their average. I'll just call this ADP, right? And it's not going to actually work at first, but I'll show you where my mind's going with this. We'll just call this ADP. That should be a number as well. That also will be a number that has decimals. So a number, decimal places. How many decimal places we got here? Average draft position 3.5. We'll assume that everything's going to be a single decimal place. So let's go back and let's save. And then let's just grab a data workflow here. And we're going to just dump this data from our plugin into data workflow players into the dynamic grid. Plug players, and then we're just going to do super simple to start. And we'll just do this into DG players. All right, oops. And let's just have this data workflow watch the plugin, so it's just done. All right, cool. So let's refresh. Now I should get all that data in my dynamic grid. I did not. Why not? Plug players, yes. Console, plug players. Oh, I didn't put the component. That explains it. Save, and here we go. One thing I want to do actually before, let's just add a bunch of cool things I always love. I want to group, I want to sort, I want to filter, and that's all I want to do. That's a lot. All of that in 3 checks of a box, you get a ton of stuff. All right, cool. So what's going to happen? My ADP is going to be blank, right? Because there actually isn't an ADP field, and you'll see why. So cool. So here it is, right? So here is, well, it's automatically ranked by ADP, actually. That's what it looks like the application does for me, right? So here it is. Now I got my players, and then what can I do? I can group them by position, right? I can group them by bye week if I wanted, looks like some people don't have. Oh, these guys probably don't have teams anymore. James White retired. Kenyon Drake just said he got let go. So yeah, so here's This is an interesting way. Find all the NFL players who were drafted last year but not currently being drafted this year, right? So we can do obviously a bunch of stuff. We can look at the teams and we could see stuff like that, right? So that's pretty cool. Actually, so I don't like that they don't have that this is happening. So I'm going to remove, let's get rid of these players because this is messing up my view. All right, so we're going to get rid of some data. We want to do that. And what else do we want to do? I also want to do something about ADP. I want to make ADP come back into the equation. And I want to do so in a way that's relevant to people. Because one thing that I noticed when I was looking at this data, right, is that for each and every average draft position, they have average draft position 2 QB, average draft position dynasty, average draft position individual. So dynasty is, I guess, if you have a fantasy, a keeper league where you can keep a certain player. The average position IDP is individual defensive players. So that's if you actually, most folks out there probably select just a single team's defense for their fantasy team. I'm in one of my 2 leagues is an IDP league, which means we draft 6 individual defensive players rather than just drafting entire teams. And then average draft position PPR. Okay, so these are all different configurations of your league. So what we want to do here is we want to say, hey, why don't we let people include the type of league that they play in, and then we will, give the ADP based on theirs rather than having to have a column for each. Okay, so how about over here? Let's go this and let's add in a radio button. Okay, and we'll call this league type. Type of league. And let's just put them in. So what was it? There was a 2 QB. We'll just call this standard. And we had a 2 QB. We have a dynasty. We have we're not going to focus on defensive players right now as much as that pains me to say. And we have a PPR. Okay. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm also realizing that you might have a 2 QB league that is PPR as well. So a radio button, probably not the best choice here. That said, we'll see if we have time to try to go figure out, well, what if you select multiple league types? What do you do? And how do you kind of average across? But we're going to keep it pretty straightforward for now. And let's just make sure we had it right. Average position, 2 QB, dynasty, PPR, and then nothing, right? And then actually, let's just put nothing there. Okay, cool. So now I've got my league types. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my data workflow. And it's also, I'm going to throw in another input, which is league type. Okay, and that's not going to be required because if it is required, then I choose standard, nothing's going to happen, right? So maybe we don't want that, right? So what we want now, let's think of that. So we want to basically say, depending on the type of league, I want my ADP position to be representative of their ADP. They also have auction value. I'm telling you, I'm going to probably spend the next 48 hours because one of my leagues is an auction league. One is a snake draft. So all of this data here is super interesting. I'm probably going to spend the next 48 hours building out, while I still have a free trial with sports data, building this all out, right? That being said, though, let's come in and let's take a league type. So we want to pick out a specific key called called ADP based on this. All right. I did not practice this, so we're going to do some IPAs. So what I want to do, so now I've got the key that ends at the end, right? So let's just, first thing, let's do a formula. And we're going to concatenate. And we're going to concatenate average draft position with the A being the league type, right? So now what I'm basically saying is this is going to give me a property name that's going to be the appropriate property name for the type of league that I've selected, okay? Then we're going to come in and we're going to say that we want, we're going to do let's do a create field. This is actually going to be maybe simple, pretty simple. Let's do a create field on this. And we're going to plug our fancy schmancy formula in the top. And then let's output it, right? And let's say create field. And we're going to do ADP equals arg. And if I'm not mistaken, this should take a new field called ADP and set it to the value of the field whose key matches this formula that I've just created, right? Now, let's go and let's hit save and see what happens. Not a number. All right, what have I done? Let's go up here, DG players, ADP is average. Oh, it didn't do it. It actually just set it equal to the string, not equal to the value. All right. Cool. So let's do this then. All right, come on. Oh, how about this? We're going to do a rename. We're going to do this instead. We're going to do a map keys. How about that? That should do the trick. So let's try map keys. So what a map keys is going to do is it's going to basically say, I'm going to take in the original table, which would be my top, which would be this. And my map keys is the mapping table should be a column with the original and the column with the other. So let's take a IO, let's take a create table, and we're going to not create an index. We're going to give it, we're going to give it one row. And then let's do a create field on this. And now let's say we're going to create field with this formula instead. And we're going to say that we want original equals original equals R, because we actually want that string. And then we'll call this one old, we'll call this one new, and then this will be ADP. Okay. So now if I plug this into my map keys, I can get rid of that create field. Now my map keys, I say old, new, and let's try saving that. See how we do this time. Hey, I've got an ADP. Cool. So just because I maybe did that quick, just for anyone who's not too familiar with the map keys. So what we want to do is, because in the original, so let's actually just go, we'll look at the original array here, right? So in my original array, I have these are my keys, of course, right? The thing on the left side is my key, the thing on the right side is my value. So I have the keys of all these different average address position names, okay? And what I wanted to do was I wanted to change the name of one of the keys to another key. So I'm basically that's what the map keys does. And it says, hey, in this source column, I want to take within my source column, which could be many different rows. Now I only created one row because I only want to rename one field, whatever field aligns to the type of league that I've selected. Okay, so I only needed one. But of course, you can have a whole list of keys here and then do a mass find replace. And this would be good for doing data mapping. If you have a set of keys in your submission data and you need to send that data off to some API and maybe they call things differently, you could do one clean, quick mapping and then call everything the same if you didn't want to necessarily map it out in your plugin, for example. Tons of use cases for map keys. So I said, hey, I want to take something that used to be called one of these, which is again driven based on my selection up here, and I want to change it to ADP. Okay, so then I'm dynamically creating what that old value is. I'm dynamically creating it by taking in my type of league, and then I'm just renaming it to ADP, plugging it into plug players, and then spitting it out, right? So now what I should be able to do is, since this is on watch, if I go 2QB, let me open it up, 4.6, standard, 3.5, dynasty, 4.1, PPR, 3.8, right? So here we go. Like we're now able to say, all right, well, I do a 2QB league, so this is what I want in terms of my ADP. And then I could, again, go and I could say, all right, well, why don't I group by position? And now I could see the average draft position of just the running backs, right? And then if I go and I sort that, oh, I didn't kill the people who don't exist. So if I go and I sort that, right, I can see Jonathan Taylor consistently goes number one, and then like, okay, well, there's a 6 position drop off from the first running back to the second running back, and then there's a 8 position drop off after that, and then there's a 20 position drop off. Oh, look, that's not sorting totally right because 39 should be lower. All right, this is a little bit out of whack. Maybe it has to do with some of these empty cells. So let's go back and let's kill those. Not to say it's going to fix the issue, but what was I removing? I wanted to remove anybody who didn't have a bye week, right? So with that said, that's a great question. How does one filter for fields that do not, well, is it that they don't exist or they just are null? It probably is null. Now, that's not something I usually love to mess around with null values. By week 6, by week, no. So I don't usually like to mess around with null values. I usually like to clean them up. So we're going to just go that route. And it's kind of, you could just do a quick greater than, but I'm going to make it really easier. So I'm going to say keys is by week. And I'm going to fill with this little convention I've been using for years. Basically, I'm saying if for each and every record in this array, if there is not a bye week, add this value in, because obviously underscore underscore null in caps underscore underscore is typically never going to be a valid value. It's always going to be some flavor of null. And you can't like specifically look for like JavaScript null in here. So breaking away, because that's something that a lot of people might come in and say, hey, well, why can't I just look for JavaScript null in Uncork? Well, what Uncork tries to do is be language agnostic, right? It's trying to break away from particular syntax and provide, a no code way to do it. So I don't know if for folks who are familiar, like null is maybe what JavaScript uses, but it also has that thing called undefined. But then there's also in like Ruby, it's nil, and I think it's nil in Swift and probably nil in Python. Like there's so many different ways you can go null, nil, undefined, so on and so forth, where let's just not even mess with the different flavors of null. And let's just say, I'm going to use this clean. Doesn't matter if it's undefined or null. It's going to clean it if it's not valid, right? So then I just basically say where by week it equals null, right? And then I want the opposite, right? I don't want the ones that have bye. I want the ones that don't have bye week null, so I come out the bottom. I know some folks will do this little operator, which means not equal to. So if you're familiar with Excel and that's something you're very familiar, I've seen a lot in your life, use it. I'm personally more familiar with this, which might also work, but I like to keep it very straightforward and then just say that. So now I'm going to come and I'll refresh again. And what I should have done in the process is I should have wiped out everybody who doesn't have a bye week. Go all the way to the bottom. They're all gone now. So all of those players who unfortunately have lost a team, they no longer appear. But I hope that they get to enjoy the rest of their life. But I'm sure it's tough to no longer be playing football if that's what you love. right? Like if I wasn't able to no code anymore, what would I do? I mean, if I was making $15 million a year no code, I might be more okay with it. But either way, so now we got our bye week. Or let's go back to positions. I like the position. Let me look back at my running backs and let me go for PPR. And then let me sort by my ADP. And yep, so that was what was going on. Those null values were really messing up the sorting. So just a good thing to clean them, right? And it didn't need to be cleaning and filtering them out. Like maybe I wanted to keep them in there, but if what's happening is if null values are messing up sorting, filtering, any other calculations you're doing, what you probably want to do is clean that and put in place of it something valid. So let's say that I wanted to keep the players in the list and not filter them out, but I didn't want like that null value of a bye week to get in the way of things, or I didn't want the null value of my ADP to get in the way of things. So what you consider there is like you understand the data as the user with the data. What is a valid like default value, so to speak? So let's say bye week, well, I could say, hey, I want to keep them in the list, but I want to fill something out for bye. So when I sort by bye, it doesn't mess it up. Well, I can do two things. One, maybe I could say, well, according to this, it looks like nobody has a bye week till week 6, and then nobody has a bye week after week 14. And we know the season is now 17 weeks long. So maybe you understand the sport, you understand your data, and you say, hey, I'm going to clean bye week with 0. I'm going to clean it with 99, right? Clean it with some value that you know to be inaccurate and one that'll, put it at the top or bottom of the sorts. You could do the same with like ADP. You can put them with an average draft position of 1 million, or 990. 525,600. Is that the song? 525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments of deer. It's not that, but I think it's funny because there is like, what is that? Is that a Rent song? Is that from Rent? Was it Rent? Is anyone here? What song is this from? Comment, people. Help me out. What song? 525,600. Is that it? 525,600 minutes. How about Love? Yeah, what is that from? 525,600 minutes. Either way, the reason why I always remember this is because if you're in software development, you are probably often messing around with seconds or minutes, like if you're going to time something. I think, the number 3,600, what's that? Numbers of seconds in an hour, right? And then there's 86,400, and like all of these like random numbers that you wish you never memorized before, you suddenly memorize because they stand for like numbers of seconds since or until something, which then gives you what you use for math. Like, hey, if I want this to run every day, often you have to tell the computer I want it to run every 1 day's worth of seconds, So, so 525,600 times 60 gives me 31 million. All right, that number's not familiar with me. Either way, that was a total aside. But hey, rent and computer programming all go together. A lot of people pay their rent because of computer programming. Although with rent prices these days, it takes a lot more than a job as a computer programmer to afford most rents. But I digress. So anywho, so there we are, right? So now we can again do ADP, and I can start to make decisions on my PPR league, of where folks go. I can also, I don't know, you can do a ton of stuff, right? I can change. I might want to, a lot of people like to look at their bye weeks, and actually group by bye week. So like, let's group by position and then group by bye week, right? So, okay, well, I have 14 running backs that all have, the same bye week of, 36 running backs all have week 14 as their bye, right? So what do you know? Hey, don't draft Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara, maybe. Well, I don't think you want to draft Alvin Kamara anyway, because isn't he missing a bunch of games because he got himself in trouble? Either way, maybe don't draft Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Jones. Or maybe do. Some people like the strategy of just like getting everyone on the same bye week. So then you're guaranteed to lose that one game, but then the rest of the season you're at full force. So like, hey, maybe don't believe the bye week people. One way or another, now I can slice and dice data however I would like based on my league, breaking it down by positions, ADP team. And then, we looked at the data before. We can go deeper and deeper and deeper into what I could do. I'll go look at my data over here. What I could do with this kind of data in preparation for my fantasy team. All right. Any other super cool ones? Nah, but you look, there's stats. Like, anyway, maybe go sign up for Sports Data IO. Grab yourself a Montauk Wave Chaser IPA. Get yourself a nice handy module with a few plugins, data workflows, and dynamic grids. Like, becoming more and more, those three things together is your key to at least reading data in an API, and heck, why not writing data? So, like I said, I'm going to have to go work on this, get myself ready for my fantasy draft, and hopefully win. Hopefully win this year. I in one of my leagues, I have lost in the Super Bowl 5 years in a row. 5 years in a row. I have surpassed the Buffalo Bills as the definitions of ineptitude and failure in football, in the football universe. 5 years of being runner up. So maybe this is my year, and maybe it's going to be Uncork and No Code that gets me from second place to that sought after trophy, or like a mug that we get to keep in our house. So that's it. Thank you all for joining all of the APIs and IPA series. I hope you're excited for No Code. I hope you're excited for IPAs, and I hope you're excited for some football. As Fat Buddha said in the channel, are you ready for some football here on Thursday afternoon? I hope you are, and I hope you are. Thanks as always for tuning in, and happy uncoding, everyone. Have a great weekend.